Traveling to consciousness, exploring spiritual journeys to find answers in uncertainty.
What is up, conscious monkeys? Welcome back to another episode of Catch Up With Clayton. As always, I'm your host, Clayton. And in today's podcast, in this catch-up episode, I am going to give you the breakdown of a book that I just read. Super great book. And I got to give a big shout out to Tommy Horisic. He is all the way back from episode 012, 012, whatever you want to call it. And he recommended a book to me called The War of Art. Not the one by Sun Tzu, which was The Art of War. This one's called The War of Art. We sit down and we kind of have these, me and Tommy, we have these weekly or monthly meetings. So we kind of pick at each other's ideas. My brain tends to fluctuate towards the spiritual side, and his is a much more in the physical and getting business going. And so we've had this really nice flow and exchange of energy, if you will. And one of those things that came out was The War of Art. He said, "Hey dude, this is a great book. You should check it out. You should read it." And so in the last couple of days, I have read it, and this is going to be my review for you guys, because this is a very, very, very powerful book for so many reasons. Especially, and I think really more importantly, it depends what mindset you're coming from, especially if you're in the mindset where I was in, where it was like, okay, I'll kind of just do it and it will all just come to me and fill in whenever divine timing. And I know in the community, they talk about this as spiritual bypassing. So if you're in that mindset of, well, I'm a spiritual being, so all this stuff will kind of just come to me whenever it comes to me, then what you need to do is actually really, really, really dive into this book, because this book is so powerful. And let me give you a quick little highlight of what to expect or what happens in it. So really the big message that Stephen Pressfield, if you've heard that name, he's a pretty well-known author, I think, discusses is the power of resistance. He really talks about it as this extra force that is working against us. It might be egoic. It might be the comfort. It might be, this can manifest in so many different ways. It can manifest as fear, self-judgment, self-criticism, and it really prevents us from taking that next step into who we're supposed to come and what we're supposed to do here. And there's a lot of spiritual stuff in this, so stick with me and I'll get to it. But let's start off with the material. He talks about how when we find ourselves in these positions of pursuing the next thing or just about to finish something, resistance slips in and makes us doubt ourselves or makes us question what we're actually doing. Why are we doing this? What's the point? Nobody's going to read this. Why am I even putting any time or effort into this? Because nobody cares. When the reality is that this is that subtle force of resistance that is holding us back. It wants to prevent us from moving on to that next level. You may also see this manifest in your life whenever talking with friends or with loved ones, whenever you are making the changes in your life, and yet they seem to be holding you back or pulling you back down because of it. No, don't do that. That's not for you. You're a good person. You don't do that. This is that external resistance pulling you back. Maybe being nice wasn't the best example there, but I know you can think of plenty of examples when you try to make that next step in your life and try to step up, and people around you have that crab bucket mentality and pull you back down. So resistance as a whole, let's call it big R resistance, finds many different ways and avenues in order to contract you or to pull you back to who you are. And what happens is this really bizarre thing once you start pushing past that resistance, once you start doing that thing that needs to be done. First of all, I feel like there's a huge analogy here with weightlifting, where when you find yourself in the gym and you get to a point where you don't want to go anymore, you get that initial runner's high of going to the gym. You're like, oh yeah, I can do this. This time is different. And then what happens is you get into that routine, but then you start making little excuses. Like, maybe not today, maybe not this time. Maybe I'll just slow up a bit. And it's weird because that resistance is like that next little barrier that you need to come across, that you need to pass, that you need to overcome. If you're able to push past that small little hump, it's going to take you to that next level. It's like, that's the workout that's going to take you to that next inspiration, that next level of your activation when that resistance comes in. And so a part of this is to create your mindset around embracing the resistance and pushing through it and finding a way to get through it no matter the outcome. And this is a huge part. This is a huge key element of this, because he even talks about this, where there's a reference in the Bhagavad Gita, which I'll put it on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube, which, by the way, if you're not, you should definitely be watching on YouTube, as I am starting to blow up that channel. So putting on the screen right now, where in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about how we are not entitled to the fruits of our labor. The only thing that we are entitled to is the labor of our work. So you need to take that mindset whenever doing things. The only thing that you are entitled to is doing the actual work. The fruits of it, it's up to God. It's up to other forces unbeknownst to us as to whether or not you are going to get paid or you're going to receive energy from that labor. The only thing you can control is actually doing the labor. And he even talks about in his life how he wrote books on books on books. He wrote, I think, for 10 years he was writing books, and it wasn't until the next 10 years he actually started getting paid for it. And this is huge with anyone who's doing a creative endeavor, like myself or anyone on your end as well. And I mean, at some level, you are doing something creative in your life, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. So the thing is you really, really, really need to dedicate yourself to this mindset of, doesn't matter if I get paid for this. You need to approach it with, is this something that needs to be put out in the world? Is this something that I'm responsible for putting out in the world? Is the world a better place if this is created? Doesn't matter if anyone else sees it. That's your goal. And it's kind of cool too, because there's a parallel here with karma yoga, which is the idea of just kind of doing. Like the more you do, the more karma you work off. And there's a whole different philosophy behind that. But something I do want to touch on, which I kind of got away from whenever I brought up the weightlifting example, is dopamine. This falls into that category of, I need to take my time. I need to wait. It's going to be difficult. So maybe I just shouldn't do it. And you see this with, if you've ever done like a cold plunge, if you've gone to the gym, if you've done a nice workout, if you've ran, whenever we do something difficult, it sucks. But after you do that difficult thing, there's like this little mild sustained dopamine hit. It's weird too, because if you eat a cookie or intake a ton of sugar, that's that really quick spike of dopamine and then you crash. However, if you do something difficult, it creates this little minor influence of dopamine that's like long lasting. So that's really the point of this. It's to do things that create a long lasting dopamine hit. And the more things you can do that create a long last dopamine hit, you kind of build this momentum underneath you that pushes you forward. And I'm even seeing it in my life. Honestly, I was even thinking about just coming onto this podcast and telling you guys, all right, guys, we'll be back next week, because here's the deal. And I was going to tell you this at the end of the podcast, but I have, if you're listening to this, I have run short on podcast guests. There's something I'm working on the side right now. And so podcasting has taken a little bit of a back seat. So I will be still uploading old episodes to YouTube. So again, if you're only listening to this, please go to YouTube, subscribe, click the bell notification. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe, click the bell notification, do all that fun stuff right there. But the point is like, I actually stepped back and I said, well, okay, you can put that in as like a little segment in whatever the podcast you are about to record, which I just did. Instead, actually give some sustenance, give some value. Don't just say, oh, we'll be back next week or we'll be back in 2 weeks with the full length episodes. Actually give the people some audience, the audience, some interesting stuff that they can bite down into. So The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, I highly, highly, highly recommend that for anybody. I also recommend Alpha Brain. So go buy that. Super good. Shout out Aubrey Marcus. Shout out Joe Rogan. They made a great product. It's dope. I am not affiliated with them in any way except for the fact that I take this stuff. So go check it out. Good for cognitive brain, all that fun stuff. But what I do want to say is I want to give you a quick breakdown. Let's keep diving into the War of Art real quick. You don't mind? Got a little bit of time on your hands? It's really cool because and this is where it's going to start getting a little bit spiritual, is he talks about how there's an upfront cost almost for our physical form, our human, our body, our material existence, to put in the work, to push up against resistance. And he talks about how after you keep pushing through resistance time and time and time again, you keep showing the God, if you will, that you're going to make this effort, you're going to make this push. At some point down the line, they start intervening and they're like, oh, we see Clayton. He's actually starting to step into this podcast thing. He's doing more of them. He's posting it on YouTube. He's posting it in more locations. Maybe we should help him out. Maybe he can be a voice for the things that we want to implement in the physical world. Because you're listening to this podcast, you know that there's a spiritual dimension that's beyond our five senses. We are connected to it by our sixth sense, our third eye, different conversation. The point being is that in order to get more aid and more help from that physical dimension, we need to do the work. And this is something I've been resisting a lot because I kind of wanted to passively do it. But I'll tell you what, within the last month, and especially this book, even within the last couple of days, I have really, really been putting that energy in. And if you've been following along the YouTube journey, you can see the numbers are going up like crazy. And that is because this divine force is saying, oh shit, guys, hey, yo, guys, look at Clayton. They're like, hey, he's doing it. He's doing something. He's making it work. He's putting in the work. We should give him, you guys want to give him some help? Maybe we should give him some help. Yeah, you're going to tell him that? All right, I'll tell him this. And so then once we get first of all, you can just put in that work and just divine forces will help. But then since you are already spiritual, you know there's this other realm, you are connected to it, you have your channel open, you're meditating, you're doing journaling, you are going to listen and hear these words more so than the average person might. Or they might discount them, they might not trust them, whereas you already have that trust element. So this is your challenge for the week. I'm not really even sure. I don't really know if I want to call it a challenge, but this is what I would encourage you to look at is, where are you giving quote unquote 100% of your effort? And then how can you turn that up a little bit more? Or maybe you see that there's areas in your life where you're not giving 100% of your effort, or you know there's something that you need to do that you've been putting off for a long time to do. Start doing that because it's going to explode your mind. I promise you that. So with all that being said, I don't have too much more to add. I am working on my personal interpretation of the Gospel of Thomas. This is going to be huge. It is so cool. That's one of the projects I've been working on. It's so good. I'm only on verse 5. I'm going to release them in batches of 10. So click the link below to sign up for it, to see get discounts, so you know whenever it's coming out, all that fun stuff. This is your link to get it cheap, get it easy, get it for no, not that. I almost said free. Won't be free, but guys, this is so juicy because I'm putting so much effort into decoding these messages full of just so much wisdom. I understand why they left it out of the Bible, and I'm going to talk about it in that, but regardless, you're not going to want to miss this thing. It's so good. It's so incredible. I'm done juicing it up though. Remember in your life that you need to find a way to push past that resistance. Okay. That's your goal for the next week. All right. So if you come back to this video in a week, I want you to comment down below what it is. Even comment right now. What is it that you need to put more effort into, more energy, more focus, more drive? And that's your commitment. Then I want you to come back in a week. That might be too much to ask. Well, if you're truly committed to it, come back in a week and comment on your comments that I did it for a week and this is sick. I can see how much is evolving. And maybe this is also something I should probably add in here. Don't just expect this to all just magically explode in 1 week. It won't. You will, however, see small, minute, little things starting to happen. And that's a sign to you, that's a signal to you, to your brain, to your connection to the universe, that you're doing the right thing, that you're getting closer, that you're on the right path. Now, you might not see those little things again, but keep going. Keep doing it. I believe in you. So with that being said, conscious monkeys, I love you, and I will see you all in the 6th dimension.